Courthouse in Provo, Utah. Matt.
Hi, Trace. We just got some new details from one of our reporters inside of the courtroom who says that Tyler Robinson today was intently watching the video of Lance Twiggs' testimony, whereas Tyler Robinson had not been intently watching other previous videos, even turning his head away from the screen in earlier days. Also, his lead attorney, Kathy Nestor, has not been sitting directly next to him for the past 2 days. In previous proceedings, she had been sitting close to him, kind of comforting him at times. She has not been doing that the past 2 days. Also, our reporter in the courtroom says Erica Kirk was audibly crying today and that Robinson was squirming when Lance Twiggs discussed in the engraving of the bullets. Now, this is the first time in 10 months that we have heard from Lance Twiggs, who has largely been hidden from the public since the shooting last September. And in that video testimony today, Lance Twiggs testified that Tyler Robinson confessed to killing Charlie Kirk and then afterwards says he wished that he had not.
Did he talk about what he had done?
Didn't go into detail. I just asked him in person if what he said was true the night before, and he said it was. I started crying a little bit and said he wishes he hadn't done it, and then kept going around and just doing stuff.
Twiggs testified that he and Robinson started dating a few months after moving in together. Twiggs says after the shooting on September 10th, Robinson was updating him in real time about trying to retrieve the rifle he left behind near the campus, which was ultimately recovered by law enforcement. An agent testified about texts that Robinson was sending to Twiggs.
Getting worried, hard to know for sure, but I'm not finding my rifle. Could be in the wrong spot. Lance says, do you think they found it? And Tyler says, dunno, they haven't published anything if they have.
Twiggs also testified on video that he had not heard Tyler Robinson talk about Charlie Kirk before, and Robinson didn't really talk about LGBTQ and gender issues. If Robinson talked about politics, it was usually related to President Trump or current policies. The Twiggs says Robinson started engraving bullets for what he was describing as a hunting or a traveling trip about 1 month before Kirk was shot. Law enforcement says that those engraved bullets were recovered. And in court, Robinson was seen squirming when the bullets were discussed. Back to you.
Matt Finn, live for us at the courthouse. Matt, thank you. Let's bring in constitutional law attorney Jonathan Turley, GW law professor and Fox News contributor. Professor, it's great to have you on the show. What I don't get about this whole thing is we played the tape today in court. They played the tape today in court, and it was 20 minutes versus 37 minutes because there was a lot of redactions, a lot of things taken out of that. And the worry was that the defense kept saying, listen, the prosecution is going to say this is a confession. And then in the tape says at one point in time, Lance Twiggs says that Tyler Robinson, quote, started crying a bit, saying he wishes he hadn't done it. That's a confession. That's it right there. What were they trying to hide?
Well, it really comes across as confession by surrogate, and it's very compelling. I think most people watching today would wonder, why don't they just go to verdict? Because it's so overwhelming and it's so complete. What's really interesting about this is that usually witnesses have only part of a picture. It's like looking through a prism, and you have to piece them together. This is really a witness that has it all. I mean, he has the premeditation in the form of a note left under a keyboard for him by Robinson, has a contemporary statement right after the shooting, an alleged confession, and that he repeats those statements the day afterwards. He has details that lay the foundation for all the evidence the prosecutors are going to be bringing in. I mean, I got to tell you, I've been a criminal defense attorney my whole career, and I've rarely seen anything like this. I mean, I can't see of any cognizable defense because he's obviously mentally competent. He was highly functioning. It was premeditated. He carried off an assassination for political purposes.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, as you look at this as a former defense attorney and as a law professor, when you look at the DNA and you look at the text messages and then you listen to the recording of Lance Twiggs, which to you, Professor, comes across as the most powerful? Which will have the most impact on the jury?
You know, it's interesting because at the end of the day, the DNA evidence on the weapon, the carvings on the bullets, those are going to be pretty darn dispositive for a jury. But I got to tell you, the thing that's really going to harden that jury is the rather matter-of-fact way in which he's texting his lover and saying, yeah, you know, and I'm really worried I won't get my grandpa's gun back. You know, he just killed a national leader, and he's just fretting about whether grandpa's gun is going to be taken by the police.
Yeah. Can I just put that up on the screen very quickly to give the context in here? This is what Professor Turley is talking about. It's in the Utah County charging documents. It says, quoting here, Twiggs, just stay safe. Robinson, I will. Robinson, I'm more worried what my old man would do if I didn't bring back Grandpa's rifle. Robinson, he's far scarier than any Fed. I mean, that really is very compelling. Professor, stand by very quickly. I want to go back to Matt Finn live outside the courthouse because Matt has gotten some more information from inside the courthouse. Matt, what are we learning?
Trace, just more details coming from inside the courtroom from our digital reporter. When they got to the point discussing the rifle that was used, Tyler Robinson was squirming, apparently uncomfortable, swinging in his chair, scratching his nose. He looked uncomfortable with the texts that were being discussed. Also, Erica Kirk was looking down, leaning forward, not looking at the screen showing those texts. Our reporter also said Erica was audibly crying throughout the proceeding today. When they got to the part about Lance when he was asking Tyler about the rifle and for hunting, that very graphic detail about the nature of the gun that Robinson said did well in the killing. That is when Tyler Robinson's mom started crying and wiping her eyes. Charlie Kirk's mother had her hand on Erica's upper arm and shoulder, and they were both tearful today. After showing the Discord chat logs, the prosecution also put the note from Tyler Robinson on the screen. That's the handwritten note that's been discussed that Tyler Robinson left for his lover. Our reporter inside of the courtroom says it was a very lengthy, full-page handwritten note, Trace.
Yeah. Matt Finn, back to you as the news warrants. Thank you. Meantime, at the courthouse, we've also got Donna Rotuno, criminal defense attorney, host of the Crime and Justice podcast, and a Fox News contributor, along with Josh Ritter, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, and a Fox News contributor as well. Donna, to you first. What I was kind of curious about when they started talking about the flavor inside the courtroom was the fact that Tyler Robinson was squirming when there was talk about engraving of the bullets. I mean, after all the testimony we heard, after the tape, after the apparent confession through surrogate, as Jonathan Turley was saying, why the engraving of the bullets would make him squirm? What's your theory on that?
I'll tell you why, because they want to make a big deal about other things found at that scene. The unspent bullet, the unfired bullet, the I can't think right now, sorry, the holster that was outside. And they want to make a big deal about these things and what they didn't do. So the reason that those engraved bullets are so important is because they know that the bullet that was fired at Charlie Kirk was engraved. And so that is just one more piece of evidence that ties him to this. And frankly, the fact that you have Mr. Twiggs talking about the fact that he asked about engraving them. He told them where the item was that he could use, the tool he could use to do that. It was in the pantry. I mean, these are very detailed pieces of information. And you saw Mr. Twiggs. He testified. He's talked to the officers. He seemed very calm. He didn't seem bothered to be there. He didn't seem like he was under duress. He answered their questions. He seemed very forthcoming. So to me, that one piece of evidence really links Tyler Robinson in a way that other pieces of evidence could possibly be refuted. This is not one of them. So to me, that was extremely important today, and maybe one of the most important things. And it was something we have not heard about up until this point.
Yeah, I mean, there was just so much compelling evidence, Josh Ritter. When you look at the totality, I mean, you and I 4 nights ago talked about the fact that the threshold seemed to have been reached on Monday. I mean, on Monday, the judge's like, yeah, we're going to trial. And now they've just put out so much information and so much evidence that you made the point earlier, like, you know, you maybe walk back in the court saying, we're done. I mean, that's a possibility. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think we reached that threshold day one. I mean, Don Jr. talked about this. Day one, he was convinced, and I think everybody else was. And I do think they reached that threshold of probable cause. Now, today, it has been a flood of new information that makes this case overwhelming, in my view. And all of it is information being supplied by Robinson himself. The text messages, the Discord chat, even the engravings on the bullet, the letter. All of this is from either his own mouth or his own hand. This is incredibly powerful evidence when you start to get to a trial, because jurors may take issue with things like ballistics, and they may take issue with experts disagreeing on DNA. But when you start talking about things that the defendant said, confessions to the crime, there is very little that a defense attorney can do with that type of evidence.
Yeah, I want to bring back in Professor Turley very quickly on this, because the charging documents also have this detailed note that Tyler Robinson left for the roommate. This is filed on September 16th, and it reads, quoting here, on September 10, 2025, the roommate received a text message from Robinson which said, quoting here, drop what you are doing, look under my keyboard. The roommate looked under the keyboard and found a note that stated, I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it. Police found a photograph of this note. I mean, again, it just mounts, Professor, it just mounts, I mean, all of this evidence, and I'm just wondering here that if is this stuff all, is the defense have any chance to knock any of this stuff out?
I think it's going to be very hard to knock much of this out, but keep in mind, you could take out 98% of this stuff and still have a slam dunk conviction. I mean, that's how bad all of this is. I mean, there's a truly otherworldly aspect to these communications. This man just engaged in a political assassination, but he's worried about what daddy might do if he doesn't return the gun. I mean, it's such an awful insight into the type of mind that would commit this type of crime. He just murdered a human being, and yet he's sort of joking about how, you know, grandpa's gun still has that caliber weight to it, and how impressed he is with it. That type of thing is not going to go well with the jury. And part of the problem with this evidence for the defense, by the way, is that at this stage, when you've got overwhelming evidence against your client, you're looking for a pitch to make to take off the table the death penalty or some other aspect of the case. But you have to put something on the table of value to the prosecutors besides, I can save you the time of a trial. The problem here is that the prosecutors have nothing that they need from the defense. Their client has already handed them a slam dunk case for conviction. So why would they agree to a plea? So, you know, the question here is whether he's going to decide, yeah, I don't want to go through a trial here because there's no point to it. Maybe the judge will cut me some slack on the other end. But I don't see it's not just the lack of a defense. I don't even see a good angle to try to engage in meaningful plea discussions for a reduction.
Yeah. My next question was going to be, is this the time they start talking about trying to get rid of the death penalty and getting something lesser? But I think you answered that, Professor. Thank you. Josh Ritter, thank you. Donna Rotuno, thank you as well. We will keep watching this. The court should be back in session in about 15 minutes.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.